It all started with a phone call. A University of Portland student, it was her first year. She had rowed in high school, and her coach was a good friend of mine. And she arrived at University of Portland and quickly realized she missed rowing quite a bit. And she gave me a phone call. I remember it really well. I was sitting in PDX at the airport, and I took the call, and she asked if I could give her some advice. And I said, hey, I'm happy to find you guys some boats. And we quickly, by the generosity really of the Portland rowing community, we quickly had a coaching boat. We had an 8 for rowers to learn in, and just started going down to the boathouse. Even though it was a club sport, the students were really earnest about it. So they were there every morning, and we kept a great competition schedule. That first spring, I only had Megan Thompson, who had any rowing experience, but quickly this women's 4 came along, and we were at the West Coast Championships, what was called WERA back then. And that 4, kind of a Cinderella story, they were winning. The final stretch, they were beating Cal Berkeley, which is a predominant rowing program. And then one of the women caught a crab, which means, her oar got jammed in the water. It jackknifed the boat. Cal Berkeley and a couple other boats passed them. But even though that happened, University of Portland was clearly on par with the other programs. And within 2 years, we started going to the Head of the Charles. We'd fly out to Boston. The students would raise their own money, and we'd fly out and we'd compete at the Head of the Connecticut one weekend and train for a week in Vermont, and then head down to Boston and race there. In the early days, we talked a lot about, who was going to stand on their shoulders. The students were very aware that they were building something. And it was so fun for them to be enjoying their own successes. But they were aware that if they did this right, that there would be future generations that could enjoy the success.
I was the assistant coach at UCLA and the recruiting coordinator, but was very excited for the opportunity to be the founding head coach at the University of Portland. I'd been a head coach previously at Sacramento State, so returning to that role in general was appealing, but also only one person can ever say they were the first head coach, and that was very appealing as well. And it was very obvious to me that Portland had done a very good job in planning out their decision to add women's rowing as a varsity sport, and there was good support throughout the entire university. So it looked like it would be a great opportunity. Truly starting a program from the ground up was challenging, but I'd sort of already done that before when I was head coach at Sacramento State and assistant coach at UCLA. Plus Karen Peters, she had done a lot of the legwork, whether it was already having the rowing machines or ergometers on hand, planned out the office space, worked out things with the Portland Boathouse. And there was a club sport, so there was already a little bit of equipment. Not too many of the women from the club sport wanted to join the varsity team, but they were all invited. And a couple of them did take that opportunity, including Melissa Gomez, who was an excellent student athlete and of course is now the assistant coach. The first year, the main goal was to have a full NCAA championship squad, which in rowing is 23 women, including the 9 people in the first 8, 9 people in the second 8, and 5 people in the 4. But I was pretty confident based on the depth of the WCC at the time and my past experience that we could probably take 5th place the first year. And that's ultimately what happened.
It was exciting being a part of a new program and growing the number of Division I programs in the country. It's also important that the University of Portland was building a boathouse on campus. There were only 2 universities on the West Coast that were going to be able to claim that. So just having the sport grow in Division I college teams across the country and just seeing the impact it would have on the Northwest community was huge. Every year felt like a new year, and some different part of the program was important to build and to strengthen, just to create that tradition and infrastructure that would be passed down.
People always ask about memories from coaching positions, whether it's University of Portland or elsewhere. And I think the answer is the same. And it's not really the races that were won or any of the exciting competitions, although that's important as well. It's always the people. And I'm pleased that I'm still very friendly and in contact with Scott Latham and Karen Peters and some other people on the faculty and staff at University of Portland, as well as a lot of the former athletes. So it's always the people, and the people at University of Portland are wonderful.
I mean, there's definitely a lot of great memories. I certainly remember, being down on the docks, my dog running around in her life vest and hopping into the coaching launch. I remember showing up one morning and the rowers had thought it would be funny if they painted a shark mouth on the front of my coaching launch so that when it went through the water, it looked like it was chomping the water. The rowers were just really wonderful in what they did. They would organize our trips to California, to Seattle, to Boston. As much as the rowing, I think I remember the team dinners, crashing at parents' houses that would host us while we were going. And there was just a real good family feeling to the whole team.
One of my favorite memories from working at University of Portland was just working with the people. From recruiting new rowers to coming into the program and recruiting on campus, it was really exciting for people to be a part of something that was new, and that's the kind of people that we attracted. They're like, hey, we know this is going to be hard, this is going to take some time, but I want to be a part of this new program and help build it, which was super important. When I got there, we knew in a year we were going to be kicked out of Portland Boathouse. But the boathouse at Vancouver Lake, even though that was such a struggle, I think we had a week before the students came back, and I had to figure out how to put racks in the boathouse. And so kind of all those things, like I'm drilling redheads into the ground. I don't know how to drill into concrete, but I learned some volunteer support so we could have a place to store the boats. And I know how important that infrastructure was, but it's also a 25-minute drive from campus, so it's great to have two. There's nobody who has a 2,000 meter race course like University of Portland does out at Vancouver Lake, and plus a boathouse on campus. There's 3 or 4 programs in the entire country that have that.
Facilities, of course, are always very important, and it's unfortunate in general for the rowing community that the Portland Boathouse doesn't exist anymore. But it was a very smart move by University of Portland to make the interim move to Vancouver Lake and partner with them and build the boathouse there. And of course, I know I'll make a trip back one way or the other to see the new boathouse when it's done on the river campus. The other important thing in rowing, of course, is the equipment itself, the shells, the boats. And from the get-go, University of Portland was very committed to raising the funds and helping get the team what it needed.
I think 20 years ago, when we were thinking about what this could be, that's a dream, to have a boathouse on campus, to know that the program will be around for decades, is everything that I don't even think we didn't have that vision, but that's what we were working for, even though we didn't know we were working for it.
I think it's so great to see that the boathouse construction is underway. It's just such an important place, a home for rowers to be able to work hard and come together as a community and celebrate everything that they've accomplished so far. So I'm excited to see that foundation go in and those walls go up.
When you take a look at the demands on any Division I student athlete, obviously there's the academics, and Portland has high quality academics, and therefore they're challenging. It's a big commitment in and of itself. And you add to that the time commitment, although it's a great one to be an athlete. And as soon as you can take the commute out of the equation, that really helps. So I always felt one of the big recruiting advantages that Portland would have on top of everything else is the on-campus boathouse once it came to fruition.
I mean, the idea of having a boathouse on campus is such a luxury. I guess there is something that is torturously wonderful about getting up early and having to drive through the cold, rainy morning to get to the boathouse. But that the idea of just being able to walk out of a dorm room walk down to the boathouse, and then just come home afterwards. It's enormous to have it integrated into your student life. And I think it's really important to recognize that crew is one of those sports that not a lot of people know about because it doesn't happen on campus. There's not a soccer field, there's not a baseball field, softball field. And to have that recognition and have it integrated into the college life, that plays into the psyche of the athletes so much.
It's really a game changer. And I mean, the sky's the limit. And it's also going to give a place for alumni now to come back, because before, after 2 years or 4 years into the program, you have a handful of alumni. And now, after 10 years, there's a lot more alumni that are on board, that have seen the changes, that have seen the growth, and that are ready to see the program take the next step.